So I have my pattern here, and I want to talk a little bit about how to read the pattern and how to get started with the pattern. First of all, obviously this pattern includes plans for letters A through K bags. So on the back of this, usually you get a little description of each of the bags. Obviously A is the larger bag, B is the same bag, only a little smaller, and then you've got multiple other bags. So you go all the way to the letter K. Inside this package. Now, we already talked a little bit about this, that for whichever bag that you choose, you want to make sure you look and see what all that you need in order to make that. And you'll see up here at the top too, it shows which bags that you need and what kind of fabric to use and all of that. So that's all covered on the bag back. So I think I'm going to go ahead and cut out for bag B, which is a little bit smaller sack, and I'm going to work with, that would be this one right here. So this is the same bag here, and of course I don't have that print fabric, I have a different print, but this is the bag I'm going to be referencing as I'm working. So the first thing I need to do is I'm going to open my envelope, and I know that I have parts for all of these bags, but I really want to focus on the bag that I want, which is bag B. So inside your envelope, you're going to find all of the pattern pieces for bag B and all of the others. And they're all together, so I need to figure out which ones I need. And the next thing you're going to find is you have a page of instructions that come with your bag. So I'm going to open this up, and I can see here, this is my bag that I'm doing, bag B. And then right below, I'm going to open this all the way up. So all the way below this, I can see a little mini drawing of each of the pieces that are included to make all bags A through K. And for bag B, I need to look down here at the bottom, and anywhere where I see B is indicated, I know that I need that piece. So right here I can see I need piece 4, which looks like this. That's labeled 4, so I need one of those for a strap, and that's needed for bag A as well, but I'm doing bag B. I need piece 5, which is for bag B, and it says front and back, so we'll probably be cutting out 2 of those, so for a front and a back. So I need piece 5, I need piece 6, and I need piece 7, which is this one, and let's see if there's any others. So it looks like I don't need anything else. So I can look at the letters that are indicated for all the other bags, and I don't need any of those. So I need piece 4, 5, 6, and 7. So I have 4 pieces that I need to find in my instructions or in my pattern pieces. So inside this, and this is going to be a huge piece of paper, and there's going to be lots of information on here that I need to pay attention to. So I'm going to isolate, so you can see what it says right on there, which bag this is for. So I'm trying to see if I can find any of the parts that I need for. Okay, so here is piece 7, and this one's for bag B, so I definitely need to make sure I trim this one out. Now, I always try to keep the rest of these intact because who knows, I might decide I want to make bag A sometime, or maybe bag I. So I want to keep my paper. This is really thin tissue paper, so you want to make sure you're really careful in the way that you cut. Don't cut through multiple layers at once. You want to open this up, and it's huge, so this is a big piece of paper. So I found piece 7 and I found piece 4. They're both here together. So I'm going to go ahead and separate out my pieces, and then I'm going to talk about how to cut them out properly, because there are notches that need to be allotted for that are actually going to poke out even though the pattern has them smooth. So I'm going to show that in just a few minutes. All right, so now I have separated out piece 4, piece 5, piece 6, and 7. So I have all 4 of my pieces to make bag B, and I've folded the rest of the patterns back up so that they fit inside the envelope so that I can use those another time if I want to do that. Now the one page that I don't put away is my instructions, because this is going to be what helps me get through making my bag. And this is going to be the same instruction page for all of the bags. So I want to make sure that I'm following anything that talks about bag B. So for tote A, they've got a 2 steps because they've got a contrasting fabric. So for this one, you've got 1A and 1B. I'm not going to worry about that because that's for bag A. I'm concerned with bag B. So I've got my layout design. If you remember when we were doing our machine sewn samplers, you got a layout design that told you exactly how to lay the pieces out, where the fold should be, where your salvages should be. Now this is a very interesting layout because the fold is not in half. So they've got this folded in such a way that you can use, you're only going to use a portion of the fabric so that you end up with extra scrap, which is nice. Rather than folding it in half and having a lot of extra small scraps, this will give you one large piece of scrap when you're done cutting out. So this is going to be my guide for how to lay my pieces out. But before I can do that, I first want to look at my pattern pieces because they have a lot of information on them that I want to pay attention to. So here is piece 7. It tells me I need to cut 2 of them. So I'm going to make sure that when I've got my fabric folded that I'm cutting 2. This also tells me I'm going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the bag. So it looks like I've got a 1/2 inch on the sides, and it looks like more of a 1/4 inch on the long sides, and then a 1/4 inch on the short sides. But I also have these notches that we learned about, the single and double notches when we did our sampler. Now these are drawn to the interior of the line, but when you cut them, you want to cut them to the exterior of the line on your fabric. Now many seamstresses will cut along or tailors will cut along the dark line and then just notch the fabric out. But I always find that I typically will forget to do it if I do it that way. So I like to notch to the outside of the edge of the pattern paper as well. So I'm using a paper scissor and I'm going to cut down to the notch. I'm not going to make you watch me cut all of these out cleanly. And I just kind of cut around them so I could demonstrate this. So I'm going to cut the notch out and over and down, just like the notch on piece B if we had a double notch on there and piece A had a double notch. And then I'm going to continue on my way, cutting along the dark line of my pattern. Now I've got a single notches on the ends, so I'm going to again cut to the notch. And then I'm going to cut this little V-shaped notch sticking out. Side 1, side 2. So when you cut your pieces out, you can see that there. That's little notches sticking out opposite where it's drawn on the paper. So one other thing, I'm going to get all these cut out in a minute, but I also wanted to show you a couple other things. If you see dots like this, now you've learned about the dots, that needs to be transferred using a fabric pencil to your piece below. So you'll be able to use this to mark those dots. I'm sure that's where something comes together or a seam matches or something's going to happen there as we're working. So I would mark those with my fabric pen. I also wanted to show you something else. This is an important piece. It's got some extra instructions on here. Now it says cut 3 on the fold for view A. Now am I doing bag A? The answer is no, I'm doing bag B. So I don't need 3. Let's see what it says here. Oh, cut 2 on the fold view for bag B. Now what in the world is a fold view? Well, what I need to make sure that I pay attention to is right here, this says center fold. So what I'm actually going to do is be placing this on the fold of the fabric so that when I cut this out, I'll cut the 2 sides and then this will open up to double width. So I'll show you that when we get to the point where we're cutting out. But you want to make sure that you pay attention to things like that so that you know this is a piece that's going to be on a fold here so that when it's cut, I'm not cutting there. I'm leaving that folded so that I can open it up and have it double length. Let's see if there's anything else on here. This is my pocket, front and back for bag B, and I need to cut 2 of those. And lastly, I've got piece 5. This is the front and back for piece 5, so it's the 2 sides of the bag. And I'm going to cut 2 of those, so I have a front and a back. So the pocket then, as you notice, will fit not quite halfway up the bag, so there'll be some of the bag sticking out of the top, and then the pocket will be here, so I'll be able to tuck things inside. You can see these are probably sew lines where I'll be making 3 pockets across the front and back of the bag. And then obviously this one's my strap, and then this one is the top of the bag. This will probably be on the inside. This will end up going on the interior around the top to kind of reinforce that top edge of the bag so that it's got a nice thickness there for the straps to be attached to. So those are my pieces that I'm going to need. I'm going to go ahead and trim them more carefully, and then we'll talk about how to lay out with fabric. All right, so now I'm ready to lay out my pattern pieces on my fabric. Now I'm going to tell you, I don't want to necessarily make my bag out of this fabric. I've got a different idea for what I want to do with it. But let's say that you found the fabric that you want to do, and you've got all your pieces cut, which I have all 4 of mine ready, and all 4 pieces are supposed to be cut out of the same bag for this. That's according to my instructions. So I know that this is the layout. Now I want you to notice where it says fold, and salvages are the edges of the fabric. So I'm supposed to have a salvage up here and a salvage down here. So it's going to go longer on one side, and then the fold is going to be a little bit shorter. So right now I have both of my salvage edges up here on my fabric. So the way that it wants me to lay this out is it wants me to fold down this edge so that they're uneven, so that the fold becomes down here. And it's a big piece of fabric, so this was left over from my daughter's bedroom years and years ago. I made her curtains out of this. This was just a leftover scrap, which is cute fabric, but I want a different fabric for my bag that I'm actually going to sew as my demonstration to you. So I'm going to grab my pattern pieces. Now it just so happens that this particular pink gingham has no front or back. It's the same, but obviously if this were a print that had a front and back, you would want the part you want to show, the right side of the fabric would be on the inside. This would be the back of the fabric for your layout. So looking at my picture here, I need to make sure that piece 5, 6, and 7 are laid out just the way it shows there. I want to make sure that I have them facing the correct direction. And I'm laid out on the floor because that way I can get my camera up high enough for you guys to be able to see. But you can also lay out on the floor. So I've got piece 5 goes there, then 6, then 7 goes here, and they're against the edge of the fabric here. So I'm actually going to scoot these down a bit because they want to near the edge. Because I don't want to cut this part if I don't have to, right? I want to make sure I'm fitting them together. And then piece 4 is going to get a fold in the middle. So it's showing as a double. So this piece 4, there's my center fold. So I need to be able to cut this here, not cut that edge, and then I will flip my pattern over and finish cutting the rest of the way. So this will stick out beyond these pieces. So that looks about like where I need to pin things in place. Now they've got this right up against the edge like that, so I could actually fold this out a little lower so that this top edge of the fabric comes down lower and still fits the pieces. That way I would have less waste, which obviously is important. It's not the point to make a lot of waste. You want to make as little waste as possible. So I could lay these pieces out even lower. They could even go lower yet, but that's not bad. So these pieces are going to get pinned down here, and then I'll cut those out. Now, as I told you before, I'm not really going to use this fabric. I have a different fabric. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to be cutting the bag portion out of a solid, and I'm going to cut the pocket out of a print. So I have 2 colors. and I'll probably do solids for the strap and the inside top. So I'm going to go ahead and pin, and I will cut those out. So I have all of my pieces cut out except for this strap, and this strap has to be placed on the fold, as I was pointing out when we cut this out. It says center fold. So I've placed it on the fold of the fabric, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. And I left enough room because I need to make 2 of these, if you remember from the instructions that were on the pattern paper. So I left enough room that I can cut a second one. So I'm going to go ahead and cut down the side. And now I'm going to unpin my pattern and then move this over to this piece, again placing this edge on the fold. So what this means is when I open it, then it's double the length, which is what I want for this. So that's one of my pieces. I'm going to have to do another one, and this time I'm going to again lay it against the fold, get this pinned in place, and then cut out. All right, so I have all of my pieces cut out, and I was looking on my envelope at the information that it has here. For tote bag B, I do need a 12-inch zipper that I didn't plan on, so I have some extra zippers, and I found one. It's actually a 14-inch zipper, but I'm going to be able to use this and make it a little bit smaller so it will fit between the dots. So if you remember when we were, I'm going to have to transfer those 2 dots using a fabric pen, and that's where my zipper is going to go because the top of this bag zipper's shut. So that extra bit will have to get taken off the zipper, which is not a big deal. That's pretty easy to do. So that's the zipper that I will be using for this bag. And the next thing I want to do, since I've already figured out which pieces I need, did all my cutting out, now I'm ready to flip over to the part that says sewing instructions. So there are some things that that top part that apply to all of the bags in this envelope. First of all, there's a fabric key. You remember when you were like in social studies and you would see the key that talked about, you know, what parts of the map were whatever section. This is similar. There's a dotted part. This indicates the right side of the fabric. So anytime you see something that has that designation on it, that coloring, that's the front of the fabric. And then the wrong side is indicated by no markings at all. So this is the wrong side of the fabric that's showing in this part of the bag. So here's the outside, then you know you're looking at the inside there. There's ones with like little hatch marks on it, and that is actually for interfacing, which luckily my pattern doesn't call for it, but it would look like this, where you would have those hatch marks to show interfacing on there. And then lastly, the big polka dots are the lining. So if you look at this one, shows some lining with the bigger dots, and that one's the smaller dots, which indicates the right side of the fabric. So it's important that you consult with that so that you know which side which way your fabric should be going. Now, the general directions also continue. It talks about to stitch things with 3/8 seams, right sides together, and press all seams open unless it's otherwise indicated. So that's a good thing to know. And then it talks about clipping your curves, which you guys have already had experience with when we did our mask, to clip those edges so that it curves nicely. And then trimming corners off too with 3 angles. So we'll talk about that when we get to the corners, because there will be some corners on here and you have not done that yet. And then it talks just a little bit about finishes and things, which I don't think this bag contains any of those issues. So if I look for the instructions and where it starts, bag A and bag B are going to be simultaneous with their instructions, because if you recall, bag A and B are the same bag, just A is a little bigger than B. So I'm making bag B, so this is where I am. And it says here, note, you have to cut 3 straps for bag A and 2 for bag B. I've cut 2 because I'm doing bag B. So my very first step, and if you notice it has them numbered and it shows you a little picture. So it says press under hem allowance on upper edge of the pocket. So I know pocket is going to be piece 4, I believe it is. Or no, 6. Piece 6 is the pocket, and it says right on there, pocket. So I know that this is the piece that this is referring to. And it says press under the hem allowance on the upper edge of the pocket to form a narrow hem, and tuck the raw edge underneath to meet the crease, and then press. So it's basically a double fold like we've been doing for our pocket that we did on our sampler, as well as the blind hem did a double fold. So this is going to be a double fold press, which means use the iron, and then stitch in place. So I'm going to be stitching along there as well. So that's my very first step. So I'm going to do that with both pockets. I'm going to do that with both of these. So I'm going to remove my pattern pieces and set my fabric aside, because I'm going to take that over to the ironing board next. So you can see my pieces are right side to right side as instructed in the directions packet. All right, so I have sewn my 2 pocket edges. I did a double press to the edge there, press it under twice, and then stitched across the fold edge so that stays down and intact. So that is done. So now I need to look at my instructions and see what's next, and I'm on step 2. It says pin wrong side of pocket to the right side of each bag front and bag section, matching notches and having raw edges even. Baste raw edges together. Now, if you remember from your instructions on your sampler, a basting stitch is the regular 0-0, but you need to increase the stitch width to 5.0. So that's how I'm going to be attaching my pocket to the sides of piece 5. So I'm going to unpin my pattern, and I need to pin the wrong side of the pocket to the right side of the bag. I'm going to set this aside. Now this obviously has some markings on it that I may need to be able to look at later, so I don't want to put those too far away. So I have my 2 pieces, and if you notice, they were cut face to face, so I have right side to right side. And I need to pin the wrong side to the right side, matching up notches, just like that. And then it shows that I need to stitch around this outer edge with a basting stitch. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to be stitching all the way down and around with the basting stitch. Now, I noticed on some of your samplers that you were stopping below the hemline of the pocket. Go past it so that you make sure that that's really secure. Obviously, that needs to make sure that that's stuck, otherwise that whole thing could flip down. Also, when I get to these corners, I'm going to be pivoting on the needle, like we showed on the tips video, where it shows you just lift the foot, leaving the needle in, and rotate the fabric. So we're going to be doing that on these corners, and I need to do that to both this one and this other side. So I want to make sure that I have both of these ready to go, and I'm going to pin those in place and get those sewn, and then I'll be right back. So I've done the basting stitch. You can see the stitches, probably shows up a little better in the green. Nice big 5.0 stitches. I've gone around the edges, pivoting on the needle. So my front pocket is attached both sides. So one side will be the front, one side will be the back to my bag. So those are ready. And now I'm on to step 3, which is with right sides together. Stitch bag front to bag back at the lower edge, leaving the corners free. So just across this bottom edge, they're telling me to stitch. Now it does not say basting stitch, so I'm going to go back to my default here for step 3, and it shows a smaller stitch width here. So I know that that's a regular stitch. You can see the difference between the basting and the regular there. So I'm going to pull my 2 panels down here. I'm going to put, as the directions say, with right sides together. So both my right sides are going to be together. And it says stitch bag front to bag back at lower edge, leaving corners free. So I'm going to stitch across this edge right here, just right there, nothing else. Everything else should be fine, and you can see right here it shows that this is not stitched, so it's folding it open so you can see that this is not stitched. Only across there is where it needs to get stitched. So that's my next step. I'm going to go ahead and do the following step 2, which is step 4. So it says stitch edges of your strap sections to form one long strip. So you can see how the sections, now I've only got 2 because I'm doing bag B. If you had 3, you would be doing bag A. So I'm going to stitch those 2 together, and the way that that's going to work is I'll need to put right sides to right sides, and it looks like the notched edge is the one that's going to get put together. So I'm going to make sure I match up my notched edges together and sew across there so that I can flip that open and have a continuous strap. So I'm going to take care of those 2 things, and then I'll be right back. So my bag is now attached at the bottom. So you can see this will end up being front and back. This part is not needed for my next step, which is step 5. I did go ahead and attach my 2 straps together, and I pressed the seam open. So if they tell you to press the seam open, in fact, in the beginning we stated that the directions say press seams open unless otherwise indicated. So that means, you know, that's where my seam was sewn, like that. To press it open means you put one piece to each side and press it flat like that. So that's my continuous strap then. So I've got this one big long piece of strap material, and I'm ready for step 5. Now step 5 is going to be done at the ironing board initially. It says press one long edge of the strap to the inside along a fold line. Now the fold line is indicated on my paper pattern. You can see where the fold line is. So this looks like at least 5/8 inch, maybe I'll have to look at that, maybe 3/4 of an inch. So I'll have to look at that and see, but I need to fold that in on the fold line. So press one long edge of the strap inside along the fold line. Press the remaining long edge of the strap to the inside along the fold line, and press under 3/8 of an inch on upper long edge and stitch close to inner pressed edge through all thicknesses as shown. Now that's a lot of words. It's important that you kind of look at the picture and sort of process it and see. So it looks like I have to do a small fold, which I'm assuming is going to be this dotted line for the first edge, and then press the remaining long edge of strap to the inside along the fold line. Press under 3/4 of an, or 3/8 of an inch on the upper long edge. All right, let me see if I can figure this out, because sometimes it's important to, I like to kind of figure it out by looking at it closely. Sometimes with my paper pattern. All right, so it says press one long edge of the strap inside along the fold line. So I'm going to put it on, that they're calling this the fold line. So I'm going to assume that that's, so if we pressed one long edge like this all the way down the whole strap, and then press remaining long edge of the strap to the inside along the fold line. Okay, so they want me to do that, and then press under 3/8 of an inch on the upper edge and sew close to the inner edge. All right, so I think this is what they want me to do. So I'm going to be, and you can see here the right side of the fabric is out, so I'm going to be pressing, or the wrong side of the fabric is out. Double check. Well, the dotted is the right side, white is the wrong side, so right side of the fabric out. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to be pressing like that. I'm going to press like this, so a big hem and a little hem, and then this gets placed on top of that, like that, and I'm going to sew right down the middle, like that, so that that becomes my strap. So again, I'm pressing a wider hem here, which I believe looks like, I think it looks like maybe even close to an inch, and then this little edge here, and then flipping this to the midpoint, so this ends up getting folded to the halfway point on the strap, and then I'll be stitching down that middle section. So it'll give me one long continuous strap, and then from there I'm sure we'll be doing some other things to that to make this work for the bag. So I'm going to first go to the ironing board and get this all pressed, and then I'll be back to show the next step. So I've already hit a bit of a snag in instructions. So number 6 says, and this is, just want to show you this so that you can see it, stitch remaining end of strap, press. Now it doesn't say how, it doesn't say, like it says on the end, but I've been able to figure out, I don't know if you can see that picture, there's teensy tiny little indication that the seams are toward the inside where it shows the stitching on the top. So what I did was on the side where you see the stitching on that top fold, I just put the two ends together and stitched across there, and then that is going to be this will get attached to the bag side, and then this will be on the outside, so that will be hidden, those raw edges will be hidden when that gets attached. Now I had to figure that out by just looking at the picture and using some common sense. Now the other part that's a little bit of a mystery, it says fold strap in half along seam forming 2 loops as shown. Do you see 2 loops? I see 1 loop. That is a typo. And then it says mark center of strap with a pin. So one side is marked by my seam. The other side is supposed to be marked with a pin, but if you recall, I put 2 pieces together there, so that's going to be my center point on the other end. So here's my 2 center points. This is where the seam was sewn, and then this is where the 2 pieces came together to form the one big strap anyway. So now I'm making 1 loop with my strap as a result. So so there's my loop, and now I'm ready to look at the next step. So now I'm going to keep going. So now I'm on step 7, and step 7 says pin strap to bag front and back, placing pin at seams and seam at seams at lower edge. Okay, this sounds like a typo too. Pin strap to bag front and back, placing pin and seam at seams at lower edge. Okay, actually it's okay. Centering straps over solid lines as shown. Stitch straps in place close to the pressed edge, squaring stitching at ends of solid lines. So it looks like we're going to be laying the bag out straight. So I'm going to move my camera up. It looks like I'm going to be laying this out like that. And I want to make sure that my seam here, that's where the 2 pieces came together, that is going to go on top of the seam. I should probably, let me press, I'm going to press this seam open. I hadn't done that, so this needs to get pressed out. I also wanted to note that, okay, if you look here, when I sewed this seam, I was going through 4 thicknesses of fabric, and this is fairly thick canvas to begin with. So I did increase my, or decrease my tension. I put it at a 2 so that the thickness could go through the machine without puckering the stitching. So I think I'm going to go press this out flat first, and then I'm going to work on attaching the strap in the right place. So I will come back for that. So I've got that pressed open. Never underestimate how much help pressing parts can be, even if sometimes it doesn't even indicate being pressed. If you feel like pressing something is going to help keep something straight, by all means, press away. I think it's one of the most important steps to making things go smoothly. All right, so now I'm supposed to be laying my strap with the centers. Here's my one center mark where the straps came together, and here's the one with the seam. And I'm supposed to be laying those on this center seam in place like that. So that allows my bag handles, oops, just pulled on that. That allows my bag handles to be the same size on both sides. This will be a short handles on this one. All right, so now where do these go? Do they go wide? Do they go narrow? What I need to do now is I'm going to use my pattern, and these are the lines that show me where those straps go. So if I lay this back over, I know that I don't know if the center goes on there. I have to look at my instructions. Yes, it looks like the center of the strap goes on that black line. So if you can see, right here's the black line, so I'm centering my my strap underneath there. And same thing on this one. And again, I want to make sure that my seam is on the seam, and that this black line is in the center of the strap. Making sure this seam is on the seam, like that. And then I can flip this way. Double check this side too. And that's lining up just great. So that looks like everything's in the right place. And so now it says pin this to the surface. And then I'm going to stitch the straps in place close to the pressed edges, squaring stitching at the ends of solid lines. So I'm going to be sewing straight up. I'm probably going to have to put a pin there. So I'm supposed to sew on both sides all the way up to the top of this line and then square it off. So I'll go up, turn on the needle, pivot on the needle, and then go back down the other side. So it'll be like a big rectangle on each of the straps. So first thing I'm going to do is pin this in place, make sure that I'm attached well, and double check my placement. This side looks good, this side looks like it got moved a little bit. So I'm going to pin all that down, and then I'm going to stitch in place. So I have my straps attached to the bag body, so this is all attached now. And now that I have it attached, I wish I would have gone with the solid pink for the straps. I just think this is it's a lot of pattern going on there. Probably would have been cuter if I would have stuck with just the plain pink, but oh well, I think it'll still be a nice functional bag. So now I'm looking to step 8. With right sides together, stitch bag front to bag back at side seams. To form corners and stitch dart seams, fold corners, matching seams, and notches and stitch. So now I need to do the sides and across the corners. So right side to right side it says, so I'm going to put the right side to the right side. So I'm going to be folding this over this way. Oh, a couple of things I wanted to make sure I mentioned to you. So when I was sewing across the strap to attach it, I had to constantly check and make sure this was flat so it didn't get folded up inside the seam. That I wanted to make sure that that was continuous, so I made sure that that was nice and flat. And the way that I sewed this, I had to go down, across, and down, and across. And I made sure, I don't know if you can see my marks here, I used the paper pattern which had the black lines on there to make sure it was centered, but it also said to stop at the top of the black line. So I made a little tailor mark with the white marking pencil that's in the bin, so that I knew where to stop. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but there's a small white mark, which will brush right out when I need it to, so that I knew where to stop that top seam so that those were even on the ends. So, okay, back to what I was doing. So I'm putting front to front, and I'm going to be sewing down my sides like that. And then once I have the sides sewn, that's when I have to deal with these corners. And the way that the corners get dealt with is they get pinched flat. And once I have the sides sewn, it'll make more sense. I'll sew those pinched flat and sew across here, and that way I'll have a squared corner base. So I'm going to sew the sides first, and then I'll show you the detail on those corners. So I have my sides attached together, and now it's time to do the little corners of the bag. So the way that this works, when you've got these notched corners like that, is you kind of want to grab the two open corners, pull so that those end up straight, and your notches should match up. It looks like mine are pretty close. And I'm going to be stitching across here. Now I will go to the ironing board and iron this flat, because I definitely want to make sure that's ironed open as like that's ironed open, and stitch across there, and I'll do that to both corners. And then I'll have to work with the zipper part next. All right, so at this point I have sewn my bag corners, got those all finished and in place. So my next instructions say turn bag right side out and press. So this becomes kind of the big reveal. Get to now it's not done, but at least I get to see it looking much more bag-like. See if I like the way it looks. All right, so now I can push those corners out on the bottom, so it has nice squared corners. And I can get an idea of the size of the bag and what that kind of looks like. So it's trying to look pretty cute. So, so that's that part. So now obviously I've got this raw edge around the top. This is going to get a zipper closure, and this has like a band that goes around the top part. I haven't done anything with this yet. So this is going to get sewn in the top with a zipper in it, so this will actually zipper shut. And I have my zipper, but it's too long, so I need to adapt my zipper, and I'm going to show you how to do that, because a lot of patterns call for zippers, and they either have to be adjusted to fit the pattern, or maybe it's like me and you've got a zipper that you have that you want to use that's just not the right size. Now you can't make a short zipper longer, but you can certainly make a longer zipper shorter. All right, so I've done step 9, and it says it's going to be necessary to shorten zippers for bag A, but my zipper for bag B is too long, so I'm going to shorten it as well. So steps for the zipper here. Number 10 says close the zipper and measure from the tab down along the teeth, making the zipper the length of the top opening between the two small dots. Now, when I cut this pattern out, move this up just a bit so we can fit the whole piece in the frame. When we cut this out, I said we had these dots that on the corners that needed to get transferred. So I'm going to transfer them. And I have this red marking pen that it's a fabric marking utensil. So I'm going to mark those 2 red dots on there. And I'm going to go ahead and unpin. And I need to measure between the 2 dots to see how long I need to make my zipper. So from dot to dot, I'm going to lay that there and get a ruler. So from dot to dot, if I mark the tab, where the tab is, there's these 2 metal teeth there. I want to make sure that I keep those inside the dot. And then I got to go all the way to this dot. So I'm going to use this to measure. So I'm right at, if I go to the dot, I'm like at 13 3/4. So I'm going to make a mark where the dot is. And I can see that against the pink. It may not show up very well on the camera, but I definitely can see that. So I know that's where I'm going to want my zipper to stop, where you see that red mark there. So right there is where I'm going to shorten the zipper to. Now, how do you shorten the zipper? Well, there's a couple steps. First of all, this zipper comes with a metal piece at the very tail end. I don't have a metal piece to put there, but I can make a piece there out of thread, looping thread lots and lots of times to create a stopper so that when I unzip, it's going to hit that thread and won't go any further. So I've got a needle with pink thread, and I've doubled the thread kind of like we did for a button, and I'm going to come up right by where my, let's see if I can get that to focus. I'm coming up right by my red mark on one side of the teeth, and my knot's against the back now, and I'm going to go around and around and around in loops to connect or to create a stitch stopper, much like that metal one would be, except this one's going to be just made out of thread that I'm going to loop over and over and over to make that nice and strong. How many times? I'm at 5. I'm going to keep going. So I would say like 10 to 15 loops. We'll see how it looks. All right, so I lost count, but you can see that I've got kind of a nice thick pile of stitches there. That should hold pretty well. Let me test it and see before I cut my, so if I zip my zipper down, it hits my thread lump there, so it's not going to go any further. So that works pretty well. I feel like I can stop there, so I'm going to go ahead and knot that off on the back. And I'm going to trim those threads. Set my needle aside. All right, now for cutting this part of the zipper, this part is plastic. I could potentially cut through that with a regular scissor, but do I really want to destroy a scissor? No. I think what I'll do is I will use a pliers with a wire cutter on it, and I'll cut through that that way. So I'm going to trim where I want, so not right at that. I want to leave about a 1/2 inch of a, I'm just cutting through the fiber part, not through the teeth. And it's about a 1/2 inch or more away from my stopper. So it's going to be about that long when I cut it. So I'm going to cut through those teeth with a pliers. All right, so I am back from cutting the scissor tail off. So I cut through the end. This now can get thrown in the garbage. And now I have a new stopper, and my zipper is the correct length for my application. So now I'm going back to my directions. So step 11 was telling me how to make the zipper smaller. And then step 12 is actually telling me with zipper closed and face up, lay pressed edge of one top section over the zipper tape, having zipper teeth exposed, placing top stop at one small dot and bottom of zipper at remaining small dot as shown. Okay, so one thing already I'm noticing is they did not tell me in any of these steps to press an edge. So now I need to go to the ironing board. I'm going to press over an edge of this fabric, the one that has the dots on it, this piece. So I'm going to, looks like that has to be face up. And the way that I know that is this is the right side of the fabric. So on the wrong side is where I'm going to be folding that edge over. So I'm going to fold this over like that. and I bet I have to do it for both pieces, so I'll take both of these over there and fold that edge over to the wrong side of the fabric so that it's ready to place my zipper in between. So I guess I will pause again and I'll be right back. All right, so it didn't say how much of an edge, so I did about 1/2 inch over the top of the edge of the unnotched edge of those pieces, piece 7. So now I've got, it says with the zipper closed and face up. So I've got zipper closed and face up. Lay pressed edge of one top section over the zipper tape, having the zipper teeth exposed. So this is going to go right along the edge of the teeth, like that. Right like that. And then it says, using a zipper foot, stitch top close to the pressed edge. Okay, so I'm going to switch the foot on my sewing machine to a zipper foot, which is going to allow me to get very close to this edge. The zipper foot is very narrow. It's not as wide as the one we currently are using, so it's going to go very narrow, and I'm going to stitch along this whole edge all the way down. Yep, so that's my next step. And then it says stitch the other side of the zipper to the remaining top in the same manner. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew both of these at the same time. Well, not at the same time, but one after the other, and then I'll be back. So I wanted to show that the zipper foot a little bit more. I feel like there's some things that could be learned by attaching the zipper. So I got the first side attached. You can see the white stitching along the edge there. So that side went on pretty well, and now I'm going to attach the second side. Now normally, anytime you are sewing, you would never want to place your pins parallel to the stitch line. You would always want to place them perpendicular, but because this is a zipper, I mean, I could put them in that way to go perpendicular, but it's going to be much harder, and I feel like this way I can pull them out as I get to them. I'm not going to leave the pins in and stitch over them because the needle will definitely break if it hits any of the glass ball tops of the pins. So what I've done is I've unzipped my zipper partially down so that when I'm going to start stitching on this end, I don't want to have that big zipper pull there and try to sew around it. So I'm going to sew till I get to the zipper pull, then I'm going to pause, leaving the needle in the fabric, and then I will zip it up and then sew the rest of the way so I can keep that out of my way and not be in the line of my sewing. It should not cause a problem. So now I'm going to turn the camera. Okay, there, that looks much better. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the camera so that you can see, and you can see the zipper foot is very different looking than our other foot. You can see the nice thing about the feet on this is there's a button in the back here, this little black, you see it against my finger. You just pull that and it drops off by magnet, and then the regular foot goes back on. All right, so I've got my my zipper attached to both sides. It lays down nicely on each side of the teeth. So that is ready for the next step. So I'm on 13. With right sides together, stitch ends of the top from small dots to raw edge. So I'm going to put right sides together. So remember, that's my pink side. So right sides together. And that should line up my points on both sides. And I got to make sure that my zipper doesn't get in the way. So lining up those sides, and I'm going to be top stitching down here, well, stitching a seam right here. So it says right sides together, stitch ends from the small dots down to the raw edge. So once I do that, then I'll look at the next step. Okay, so I have my zipper attached, and I reversed it and sewed the side seams in as instructed and zipped open the zipper. And now I'm looking at this next step, step 14. It says, with right sides together, pin the top, front, and back matching side seams and double notches. Stitch a 1/2 inch seam. Now, I understand what that means, but it doesn't match the picture, which that's not what it's going to look like. So what that means, what it wants me to do, so here's my bag. I'm gonna move this up some so you can see a little better. And here's my open zipper with the collar, and it wants me to put it right side to right side. So I'm going to be putting this over the outside. Now don't worry, after I get this sewn, this will go open and it'll be on the inside. But for right now, it has to be on the outside because I'm going to attach the two. And I'm going to be matching up my notches. So I'm matching up those two notches together. And I'm going to pin all the way around this top edge. And I want to make sure that my straps are down and out of the way. I do not want to get those caught up in my pinning. So these are going to stay down. And I definitely want to make sure that my side seams stay matched up, which they're matching up well. Oh, and this probably should have got pressed open. I'll have to make sure I open that as I'm sewing because I did not press those open. Probably should have. Again, the pattern did not tell me to do that, but looking at that, that's something that should be done. All right, so I'm going to keep on pinning. A few more pins in here to hold this in place. And then I'll go to the sewing machine and sew around it. Now I realized after I was thinking I was filming attaching the zipper that I did not press record, which did a really nice presentation on how to attach a zipper. So I'm a little grumpy about that, but I can certainly show anyone. Not everybody has a zipper in their pattern, so if you have a zipper and you need help, certainly let me know and I'd be happy to help you out with that. Okay, so it looks like, oh yeah, that matches up pretty well. Now, as you can see, it's very important that the opening of this bag matches the size of this collar. And if they were different sizes, or if I had not paid attention to seam allowances or measured incorrectly, that would not make it all the way around. It would either be too small or too big. So at this point, I'm ready to sew around this whole opening, and then this collar will flip up and be pushed down inside, and I think it probably gets top, yeah, it does get top stitched around the outer edge too. So that's the next step that I'm going to do, is I'm going to be stitching around this opening, and then I'll show the next step, and we're almost done. All right, so I've sewn around the top. This is all attached now, and so now I'm going to flip this edge up, and then this gets tucked down inside, and I'm going to go to the ironing board and press this up so it's nice and crisp, and this is going to get top stitched around the edge, and then my bag is done. So I'll have this nice little bag with a zip top inside, and that'll have a nice edge on it. So I'm going to go press it and then top stitch it and then be back to show you the finished bag. So I top stitched around the edge of the bag up here, and it's all finished. So now I can use the zipper and zip my bag shut. And so now I've got a nice cute little bag. It's got pockets all around the edge, so I've got all these pockets to put things in. So it'll be a cute bag for, you know, maybe cosmetics, or, you know, this could hold a lot. I mean, hair dryer and everything for travel. Lots of uses for a cute little bag like this. So that's the finished bag project. Hopefully that showed some things that you're going to deal with on your bag, and you get a chance to try some of the techniques out that were shown.